6 o'clock. We're on. All right. So it's 6 o'clock on Wednesday, May 10th, 2023, and I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Conejo Open Space Conservation Agency. Please join me in the salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May we have the roll call?
Director Engler?
Here.
Director Huffer?
Yes.
Director Newman?
Here.
Vice Chair Nichols?
Yes.
Chair Skay?
Here. Thank you. We have our full complement. And it's a great pleasure to, we're going to recognize Elaine Hagan, who received the Lifetime Volunteer Achievement Award from the California Trails and Greenways program. And this is a fantastic award and so well deserved. California Trails and Greenways is sponsored by California State Parks, and they have big conferences every year, alternating between Northern and Southern California. And I would like to ask Elaine to come up to the podium and say a few words.
Well, thank you. First of all, it was a wonderful honor, and I truly appreciate it. I remember 10 years ago, I think it was, what
No,
happened?
it can go.
I just had a staff had a presentation.
Oh,
Sorry.
well,
Oh,
Mr.
well, I'll go sit
well then,
No,
we'll wait.
please remain in the dignitary
Yes.
seat, but we are in the presence of greatness today, so we appreciate your being here. And this is one of the more fun parts of our job, where we get to recognize those that really make a big difference for our open space and our community in general. Elaine has been a super volunteer for over 3 decades now, and she is behind many of the successful programs still in place to care for COSCA open space, educate the community about responsible use of open space, and raise funds for open space projects. For those who do not know her, it might interest you to know she's a founding director of the Conejo Open Space Foundation from 1995, where she served as president, vice president, and secretary over the years, and probably any other role as needed. And she's helped raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for open space projects. She's spent 20 years serving as a member of the Conejo Open Space Trails Advisory Committee, COSDAC, and along with her husband Tom was a founding member of Concerned Off-Road Bicyclists Association, so CORBA, which are still going strong locally. She's the original developer of Trail Education Days, which she'll be speaking about in a few minutes. But that's a program that provides education and outdoor experience to 4th graders throughout the Conejo Valley. And since the program began in 1992, over 50,000 students have completed the program, helping to create multiple generations of people that care about our natural areas. In 1998, Elaine organized other trail users to establish a program to provide dog waste collection bags at local trailheads. Something great to be known for. Today, the program has expanded to serve all major trailheads and many of our community access points. Volunteers maintain the bag supplies that keep our local trails as well as our local waterways free of pet waste. Last but not least, Elaine is also a longtime weed warrior, and with a group of her friends and volunteers have transformed areas of open space by removing invasive plants that threaten our native plant communities. The results are clearly visible out on the group's priority areas. And this is just the short list, I assure you. Having had the opportunity to work with Elaine for the past decade, I can tell you that there's nobody more deserving of this award. She's not only done the hands-on work of conservation, but has also recruited so many people to participate in the care of our open spaces, me included. So on behalf of COSCA and our staff and board, I want to share our congratulations for your award, Elaine, and to extend our appreciation for all you've made possible for COSCA and our local environment.
Hear, hear.
Thank you.
Speech.
Can I go home now? Oh, wow. As I was starting to say, thank you so much, Brian. That was quite lovely. Thank you. I remember when Kirsten was the COSCA manager, she and I and several other people did a presentation for the California Trails and Greenways Foundation is what it is. It's a foundation at their annual event that took place in Woodland Hills. And I think we got a lot of people really interested in Trails Education Days at that point, and hopefully other areas and other agencies have picked up and have started doing education for children. The whole concept for Trails Education Days is to start them early. And back in the very beginning, we talked about how if you get the kids excited, then you can then they'll talk to their parents. And Jeff Alexander, who was part of this at the very beginning, and one of the founders of COSF and a COSTAC volunteer or appointee. Anyway, he said, it's like seat belts. Kids tell their parents to wear seat belts. That's how long ago this was. And smoking, kids tell their parents not to smoke. And so we're going to tell the kids about how important open space is, and they're going to tell their parents. And I think it works. I think it really does help. So anyway, the honor was quite unexpected and quite delightful. And interestingly enough, when I got to the event, I found two of the other Corba founders, Jim Hasenauer and Kurt Lohheit, had also received this award, the Trails and Greenways Award. So it was quite lovely. So anyway, thank you so much.
Congratulations, Elaine. And yes, you've done yeoman's work for so long. Amazing sort of commandeering and superintending all those Trails Education Days, getting the buses and the teachers and the volunteers, and it's been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, thank you. Okay.
Madam Chair, could I just say a few
Oh,
words
yes,
as well?
please.
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to, again, thank Elaine for her work. It's obviously well-deserving. But what I was just thinking of was, over the many years you've been involved in our community in COSCA and open space and trails and beyond, is just your very unassuming way of doing business. I mean, you don't expect any recognition, you don't demand any recognition, you don't even jump up and down and yell and scream. You just get in and get things done. And it's just like, well, if no one else is going to do it, I'm just going to do it. And that's what I've always appreciated about your efforts is, you've had these wonderful ideas, and you just make them happen, and pretty soon people just start following you because they see that you've got a good idea and when it actually works. And you don't have to, beat anybody up to make it happen. They just realize that you're a smart woman, and they just need to follow you. So I just want to thank you for being willing to speak up and to move forward with these ideas, because we all benefit from it. And I just really appreciate having to work with you for all these years. And I don't know what else you've got in store, but I'm looking forward to it. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Director Heffer.
Elaine, I just want to add my congratulations for a very well-deserved award and recognition. I know one of my favorite events every year, the Conejo Recreation and Park District Board, is when you have the winners of the Trail Days writing contest come in, and we get a chance to read their really well-done presentations and to find what it is that the youngsters are most interested in. So thank you so much for instituting that, and thank you so much for everything that you have done and continue to do for open space in our community.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you, Elaine. And I don't see, do we have any public comment cards?
Just the one Elaine turned in.
Okay, Elaine, did you have any other public comments you wanted to make? Please. Back again.
Okay. Yes, back again. Trails Education Days this year would have been the 32nd, but it was actually the 30th actual one because we lost 2 years with COVID. And this year about 950 fourth grade students came from 16 schools, 16 CVUSC elementary schools, And there are about 45 teachers and more than 100 parents, and about 50 volunteers total, including 8 who were there for the first time. We're always looking for new volunteers, and it's lovely to have people appreciate it and enjoy it and say, I'll be back. So that was good. One of the nicest aspects of it all was that COSCA manager Brian Stark was a hike leader, and many COSTAC appointees were there doing lots of hard work. Mulaney Ashen, Susan Bacchus, David Filgus, Kira Krukowski, John Noble, and Jet Thompson all were involved in some way with Trails Education Days. And that's a record for the percentage of COSTAC appointees, and it's terrific. So I really appreciate that. And the COSCA Park Rangers, as always, were terrific, and they hosted rangers from MRCA and from National Park Service. We had a little difficulty this year because we couldn't find equestrians for the 4 days, and we had 2 days scheduled, but the person became ill and couldn't come. So Dorothy Sullivan, and Dorothy Sullivan also on COSTAC. Anyway, she handles the trail safety and courtesy workshops. And because we didn't have horses every day, she found a smart hobby horse that she used to explain safety and courtesy. And it even whinnied, and it had a bit in its mouth, and it was quite wonderful. And she was great explaining safety and courtesy as it relates to equestrian trail users. However, next year we really, really, really want to have equestrians all 4 days, and we'll ask everybody to help us recruit them. So we had another unusual experience this year. Susan Bacchus, who is a professional in special education, took charge of an additional session at the Whole Access Trail for a large class of Madronia special ed students. And this came about, it actually was an idea that started with Kira Krukowski, who is COSTAC appointee. We found out that there were about 6 students in wheelchairs at the Madronia Inclusive Special Ed School who could not be out of their wheelchairs. Therefore, there was no way for us to transport them to the nature center, which is what we do with kids who can be belted into the ranger trucks. So anyway, she came up with this idea of doing something at the Whole Access Trail, and we ended up with about 15 students there, and we did effectively a mini version of Trails Ed Days, including animal actors with their animals. They had a hike, they had Ranger Carey was there showing off equipment and, the helmet and the chaps and the gloves and the chainsaw, not the chainsaw, but, and then the head of the outdoor unit at CRPD had a little exercise for the kids as well. So it was a really complete event for them, and I felt really, really good about it. We're going to be meeting with the Madronia's teachers next week to come up, to hear what they liked, what they would change and like that. And we might end up expanding this to include other special ed students as well if they are not able to go to Wildwood. So anyway, speaking of the CRPD board meeting and the writing contest, this year Mulaney Ashen, who had been in charge of the contest for a lot of years, decided she really didn't want to do it anymore after all those years. She's doing so much other stuff as well. But so we recruited 2 retired CVUSD teachers who have long been supportive of Trails Ed Days. And this year the contest is going to be quite a bit more structured, I guess I should say. And I think it's going to be pretty interesting. Today is the deadline. Tomorrow I'll pick up all of the entries and we'll get them sorted out. And then judging will take place on May 22nd. And then we will be at your board meeting the last Thursday in May. So anyway, also the dates for next year, we have the last week in April again. It'll be April 22nd through the 25th. So anyway, that's that for that. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Any comments?
Yeah, just one quick comment. And a friend of mine is, I believe, one of your new volunteers. And I think one of the overlooked aspects of trail days for the kids is the adults who get to participate. And this gentleman was one of those ones that said, that was one of the greatest things I've done. That was really special.
That's
So
great.
thank you for, on the part of the adults, for exposing them to it as well.
Right. Actually, I should say, part of the reason that we really encourage the letter writing is that the volunteers love getting the letters from the kids. And I'm convinced that those letters bring them back year after year. And the fact that we have so many dedicated volunteers, it's heartwarming. So, thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Amazing. Okay, we'll go to our consent calendar. We have the minutes from February 8th. Do we have a motion or any
Yeah,
indulgence?
I'll have a motion to approve.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all right. No objections. Please can we do this by acclamation? We don't have to do a verbal roll call at this point.
We're not remote,
Okay,
roll call.
all right. Okay, well, let's just do it by acclamation. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No nays or abstentions. That passes. Thank you. Next is the Caneo Open Space Trails Action Committee appointments. And this, I think, Mr. Stark, you have a report?
Good evening, Chair Skay
Oh,
and
Ms.
members of
Huber.
the board. I have a brief PowerPoint. For this year's COSTAC recruitment, there were 4 scheduled vacancies to fill. The recruitment period was initiated on February 14th when the city clerk's department posted the city clerk department posted the customary vacancy notice and issued a press release to announce the annual recruitment. Recruitment information was also posted on city and COSCA social media platforms, published in the city's City Scene newsletter, and shared via email with existing COSTAC members, the Caneo Open Space Foundation members, COSTAC's Trail Watch and Adopt a Trail program participants, ETI Corral 37, Caneo Valley Audubon Society, the Caneo group of the Sierra Club's Los Padres chapter, and Ride On and Rancho Potrero Equestrian Center. With all that, staff received 8 applications during the 30-day period. 3 applications were from incumbent COSTAC members and 5 were from new applicants. The interview committee interviewed 6 applicants. 2 did rescind their applications prior to the interviews, and once the interviews were completed, the results were forwarded to the nomination subcommittee for determination of nominees. For members, the nomination subcommittee recommends Steve Bacharach, Catherine Mason, John Noble, and Dorothy Sullivan. Steve is the current COSTAC chair and coordinates the Caneo Open Space Challenge as well as the Trail Watch program. Catherine is a trail runner and hiker, and she currently participates in the Trail Watch program, has participated in Trails Education Days, and is interested in open space conservation and promoting the importance of open space stewardship. John is a hiker and currently coordinates the Adopt a Trail program and is also interested in promoting open space stewardship as well as increasing open space visitors' awareness of trail courtesy and etiquette. And Dorothy coordinates the Trail Safety and Courtesy Skit for Trails Education Days, helps coordinate trail work days, and participates in the Adopt a Trail program. And the subcommittee also recommends Dean Barrett as the alternate appointment. Dean is a hiker and trail runner and will be participating in Trails Education Days this year, or he did. And as someone who has enjoyed our trails for many years, he looks forward to the opportunity to give back to open space. So with that, staff recommends that the Board of Directors approve the COSTAC members and alternates as recommended by the nomination subcommittee. And thank you, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Any questions of Ms. Huber? Do we have a motion? And a second?
Second.
And a second, thank you. All right, any other discussion? then all in favor of approving the slate of Trails Advisory Committee, Trails Action Committee appointments, and including the alternate, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? That carries. Thank you. Next up, we have a letter of credit appropriation for the Hill Canyon Bridge project.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the item before you this evening is authorization of a temporary appropriation of $250,000 from the Woolsey Fire Recovery Fund to serve as a performance security for mitigation requirements associated with the Hill Canyon Bridge project. And secondary to that is to make a finding that this action is not a project as defined under the California Environmental Quality Act. As you are aware, COSCA is partnering with the City of Thousand Oaks on the construction of a bridge spanning Arroyo Conejo in Hill Canyon. That's in the Conejo Canyon's open space. Construction is anticipated to begin in the fall of 2023. The bridge project will have minor temporary and permanent impacts to natural resources and is subject to the permitting authority of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Project permits require mitigation for the project impacts in the form of habitat improvements on 0.983 acres. Fish and Wildlife requires security for the successful completion of the mitigation work, and this can take several forms, such as a performance bond or some other guarantee of funding, such as a letter of credit. The amount is indexed to the market rate for 1 acre of restoration performed by a mitigation bank. In this case, that averages out to about $250,000, and that amount has been approved by the Department of Fish and Wildlife. The letter of credit is the most efficient method because it does not involve transferring funds. It only requires identifying funds that the bank can use if mitigation goals are not met. In the unlikely event that COSCA and the city fail to perform on the mitigation project, the Department of Fish and Wildlife would have the option to draw upon these funds to ensure project success. The mitigation project consists of restoring 0.98 acres of land nearby the project site. A firm plan has been prepared to ensure project success, and adaptive management techniques have been developed to address any changing conditions or project challenges. As project milestones are met, the amount of the letter of credit will be reduced, so this will be evaluated on an annual basis. The source of the recommended funding is the Woolsey Fire Recovery Fund allocation for invasive species management and habitat restoration, the unencumbered balance of which is approximately $2.1 million. Implementation and monitoring of the mitigation aspect of the project will be managed by COSCA staff, and providing the funding security is one additional way that COSCA can contribute as a project partner. Therefore, staff recommends an appropriation of $250,000 for a 5-year period to guarantee the project completion, and a finding that the allocation funds is not subject to CEQA. With that, I can take any questions.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Stark? Yes, Director Hefner.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you anticipating actually spending that entire $250,000 or some smaller portion of it?
The mitigation project is part of the larger project, so that gets funded by separate funds. So these funds would actually be used. It's anticipated that that is probably about what the restoration would cost. Mitigation and restoration is expensive work.
Okay, and does Fish and Wildlife come along periodically and tell us what needs to be done?
Well, the plan that's been developed articulates the performance milestones and monitoring expectations for each year of the project. So unless something was not meeting its metric, it's unlikely that they would intervene in the project. They would only intervene in such case as that we were failing to implement the project, which we don't intend to do.
Okay, thank you.
So it's basically like a performance bond that's held to guarantee that the work is done, is that it?
That's it.
Okay. All right. If no other questions, do we have a motion?
I would move both items, both portions of that item.
Okay,
I'll second that.
thank you. No other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. No nays or abstentions? Okay.
Thank you.
It's never easy to do a project, is it?
No, but we have experience and we're pretty confident in our capabilities.
Okay. Next item is selection process for private citizen member to COSCA Board of Directors.
I have a brief introduction. This item is to establish a candidate screening ad hoc committee for the purposes of interviewing applicants for the private citizen member of the COSCA Board of Directors and making a nomination recommendation to the board at the next regularly scheduled board meeting in September. A side item is to find that this action is not subject to CEQA. The Caneo Open Space Conservation Agency was created through a joint exercise of powers agreement between the City of Thousand Oaks and the Caneo Recreation and Park District on October 18th in 1977. Article 6 of the JPA states that the COSCA Board of Directors shall consist of 2 City Council members, 2 CRPD board members, and 1 private citizen who resides within the boundaries of the city or the CRPD district. The private citizen member is nominated by the other 4 members of the COSCA board and then appointed by mutual agreement of the legislative bodies of the city and the park district. The public member of the COSCA board serves a 4-year term. The JPA does not prescribe a specific process for selecting a public member, but staff recommends continuing to use the methods used for past selections on the following timeline. This process would begin with the city clerk's office posting the vacancy on May 23rd of this year for a period of 30 days. Posting will occur on city and COSCA websites, a press release to the Acorn, posting at City Hall and libraries, and other outlets used by the city clerk's office. Staff recommends the board create an ad hoc committee appointing 2 board members, consisting of 1 city council member and 1 CRPD board member, to conduct interviews of all applicants at a future date. The ad hoc committee would deliver their recommendation for the private citizen candidate to the full board for consideration on September 13th of 2023. I can either take questions, but at this point I'll direct the since this is a board action, over to Vice Chair Nichols to conduct the selection of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. At this point, I would be happy to accept any nominations, or if there's any questions or comments from our board members here, I'm open to whatever you need at this point.
Prior, who was there anybody currently on our board now who was a part of that selection committee?
The last selection committee consisted of myself and Ed Jones. Mr. Jones excused himself before we actually conducted the interviews, so it was just myself with staff that conducted the interviews. But that was the subcommittee that we had appointed last time.
Thank you.
So we need to have 1 city council member nominated, and we need to have 1 park district board member nominated. While they're discussing over there, I would like to offer the opportunity to Mr. Huffer, since I was there last time, if you would accept that nomination.
I'd be happy to accept that nomination.
Okay, thank you. We have 1 nomination.
And we caucused over here. I'd be happy to help out with Mr. Huffer.
All right, thank you. So we have our 2 nominees would be Mr. Chuck Huffer, Mr. Bob Engler from the Park District from the city. And if I understand correctly, this will actually go before our 2 bodies to actually confirm these. And at this point, it's just a nomination from our board. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I will be in touch with the committee at such time as the applications are received.
Okay. All right, so now, do we need an actual vote on this as well? Because see, there's a recommendation to establish an ad hoc committee.
I would vote.
Okay, all right. That being the case, I don't know, do we need a motion as well, or do we just vote?
I move that we approve the 2 nominations for the ad hoc committee.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have any abstentions? Okay,
Mr. Vice Chair, I did have one question of staff. Not being familiar with how the city operates, you said you're advertising this just through a press release and City Hall and a couple other places. Just curious as to why, when you were recruiting board members for COSTAC, you had a long list of organizations that you had solicited nominations from. Is there some, I mean, is it standard city policy to have a fairly limited distribution as you had in the discussion here?
No, we're not limited, and so any of those other opportunity, those.
I mean, since we already
Targets.
have
Yeah.
those folks presumably on speed dial or speed mail or speed email or something, perhaps to expand the audience so that more people who are interested in open space could be made aware of this?
Yes, we can certainly do that and expand
Thank you.
the notices.
And with that, I will hand the gavel back over to our chair for the remainder of the meeting.
Thank you, Vice Chair Nichols. Next item is public hearing on an amendment to the COSCA Open Space Rules and Regulations, Chapter 11, Section 238, bicycles, to allow Class 1 electric bicycles in COSCA open space. Mr. Stark.
Lori, were you going to introduce, or would you like me to?
I'll open it officially, if that's okay. Hearing having been advertised as required by law is hereby open to consider agenda item 7A, amendment to COSCA Open Space Rules and Regulations, Chapter 2, Section 238, bicycles, to allow Class 1 electric bicycles in COSCA open space, and find that this amendment is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Chapter 14 CCR Section 15061B3.
And staff has a brief presentation to go along with on PowerPoint. Tonight's item is to read the ordinance in title only. Further reading be waived. I guess Lori already covered all of that part. The proposed amendment to COSCA Ordinance Section 238 bicycles is necessary to provide clarification regarding the status of electric bicycle use on COSCA trails and to differentiate allowed e-bikes from prohibited electric vehicles. COSCA has permitted the use of Class 1 e-bikes on COSCA trails due to their similarities with regular mountain bikes in terms of their requiring human power to operate, generally similar speed capabilities, and similar limited physical impacts on trails. The policy has been shared on the COSCA website and social media channels for a number of years now. I have the existing ordinance up on our slide. This ordinance, however, does not contain specific reference to e-bikes or a definition of e-bikes. And the variety of products now being advertised as e-bikes creates confusion among consumers and trail users. The amendments will occur in Chapter 2, Section 238 bicycles. The resulting change will clarify that electric bicycles meeting the definition of Class 1 electric bicycles as defined by the California Vehicle Code, Section 312.5, are included in the definition of bicycle and therefore permitted on COSCA trails. On your slide is the proposed text for the amendment, which says, for the purposes of this section, the term bicycle includes Class 1 electric bicycle as defined in California Vehicle Code Section 312.5. The term bicycle does not, however, include Class 2 electric bicycle or Class 3 electric bicycle, as those terms are defined in the Vehicle Code. These two classes are still considered motorized vehicles for COSCA. COSCA is adopting definitions found in the California Vehicle Code, which appear on this slide. The state definition of Class 2 and 3 e-bikes, while provided, are not being added as permissible vehicles in the amended ordinance. The Class 2 definition conflicts with COSCA's definition of vehicle due to its ability to run without human power, and Class 3 bikes will remain prohibited due to the higher speed capabilities. The existing ordinance already defines other electric vehicles, such as electric motorcycles and vehicles not conforming to the California Vehicle Code section regarding bicycles, as vehicles which are still prohibited on COSCA trails. Staff recommends that the board find that the amendment to the COSCA ordinance is not subject to CEQA as stated in the introduction, and approve the reading of the ordinance in title only, further reading be waived, and if no objection, introduce the ordinance to amend the COSCA Open Space Rules and Regulations, Chapter 2, Section 238, bicycles, to allow Class 1 bicycles on COSCA Open Space. With that, I'm available for any questions.
We have questions? Yes, Director Heffer.
Do we have or will we have some kind of signage on at least some of our trails spelling out this policy so that when people see the sign, if they have a class 2 or 3, they know that they can't be there?
That's something staff's actively discussing now. What we're looking at is if we do signage, we want it to be consistent with neighboring jurisdictions just for consistency in our region because we have multiple agencies. So we'll be working across on that, but certainly efforts such as signage and other promotion is necessary to try and get the information out to the community.
Thank you.
Yes, Director Nichols.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is it's kind of a gray area the way I read this because these Class 1 bicycles, they have a motor, so they would be technically considered motorized, but then they also have pedals and they're classified as a bicycle. So is this whole effort just to kind of clarify that while there is that possibility to include it one way or the other, that for the purposes of this, I guess, amendment, is that COSCA is saying, for our purposes, we are calling them bicycles?
That's correct. They are considered bicycles by the California Vehicle Code. So we're taking part of the California Vehicle Code's definition of bicycle and applying it to COSCA's definition.
Right. I guess my concern is, since they also have a motor, and someone's going to say, well, your ordinance also says no motorized vehicles. Why does that motorized bike get to be on the trail? How do you justify that?
It is somewhat gray, but on a technical basis, the Class 1 electric bike needs human power to work. The motor cannot operate without human input.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to it. I just just like I just see that there's going to be a bit of a challenge, whether it in the field at the Rangers or if something were to get escalated, trying to finagle through the legal part. But I'll let the city attorney and those that know better how to deal with it. To me, it just seems like it's a little bit of a challenge there. And I remember at our last presentation, I think Mr. Kuba was talking about whether it has a throttle or not was a big distinguishing factor on how it works. But my other question was, do the people who own these bicycles know what class of e-bike they have? I mean, is there a label on it that says this is a Class 1 e-bike, this is a Class 2 or a Class 3? Or, do they even know what they own?
Well, they may or may not, because there's also a lot of products being marketed as e-bikes that do not meet the state's definition. They go faster and are more powerful. The bikes that are in the class system, Class 1, 2, and 3, are required to have a labeling sticker on them. So these bikes are labeled. Unlabeled bikes we might assume to be not fitting within the class system. And there's kind of a broader term of out-of-class electric vehicles. This is by no means an easy thing to communicate to the public because our communications get mixed up in a lot of these companies are marketing vehicles as e-bikes when they clearly are not meeting the state's definition or ours.
Okay. And the last question I had, and whether Mr. Kuba chooses to answer this or not, I'll leave it up to him. But when it comes to the actual enforcement, I think you mentioned last time, Matt, that these bikes are zipping by. How do you tell at a glance, oh, that's a 1, that's a 2, that's a 3, especially with the massive variety, and it may not be any of those. Is this going to be more of a passive enforcement approach or an active, where you're really chasing these folks down, or just more of an educational process where you're just trying to gradually build the population up to actually how they know what they have and try to work more passively, I guess.
I might be able to address that briefly, if that's okay with you, Matt. Well, enforcement, will kind of be on a case-by-case basis. In most cases, for the lower-powered bikes, I think our focus on enforcement are going to be on the most dangerous vehicles, and those are those electric motorcycles that we're starting to see. So the public should expect that that's where our enforcement focus will be. In terms of the bikes that are kind of closer, where it's not sure, I don't anticipate that we'd be checking the stickers on bicycles. But in cases when, the times now when we look at somebody's bike is when people are riding irresponsibly and dangerously. So there's an aspect of rider behavior that might be more germane to our decision to enforce than not enforce in those. And in cases, if there were accidents that we could document that a bike was not compliant with the rules, that might assist an injured party.
Okay. Yeah, and I know we've got some great, bicycle organizations that we work with, and I'm sure they'll participate as well too. So
well, we're not really alone in land management agencies trying to get our heads around a pretty complicated issue.
Yeah.
And it's not just us; it's also the bicycle industry. Those that are making the legal class bikes, are fighting the same battle.
Right. And I know this is still a growing technology, and as soon as you put something on paper, it's going to change again. It'll be obsolete. But no, I laud your efforts to try and at least get something started. I just, I know it's going to be a challenge for us, but I'm sure you'll do the best that you can. But thank you for the information. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Nichols. Yes, Director England.
Thank you, ma'am. I think the use of e-bikes is something that we should encourage, because it will allow folks who really are unable to get out on our trails to enjoy them and be part of the important recreation that we offer. But I have a couple of questions. One is the integration between us and, say, states and national parks. What are the regulations in those two agencies, and will there be a conflict or confusion with the public?
Well, that is a somewhat moving target. While it's maybe easier for us to set a policy and go, the state and federal are a little more cautious. And in these cases, I know in the case of the national parks, they've given that authority to individual unit managers, and so they may be trying things on interim bases. So right now, I believe the movement is that the Class 1 bike seems to be that area where most of the land management agencies are able to agree. There are some other agencies elsewhere that have chosen to allow others, but I think as a cautious approach, starting with a vehicle that we all pretty much know pretty well because they've been on the trails for a long time, I think that's where the agencies are going at present.
Yeah, I'll chime in. The Angeles District of California State Parks and Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area are allowing Class 1 e-bikes, and MRCA amended its ordinance to allow them also, following suit.
Yeah, that's good to know. I would hate to have that type of confusion, depending. Most people don't even know which trails they're on, who is the owner of the trails, much less some of the other more fine details. The other item that I wanted to make sure, and Member Huffer touched on it, is the education side of it. As has been mentioned several times, manufacturers are bringing all sorts of different products to the forefront. How do we get that information out to the public that these particular types of bikes are allowed, others aren't? Enforcement's going to be difficult in the best of circumstances. But how do we get that education? Because I think the education aspect of it is really probably have our most effective way of getting the word out. So
That's that's the most important thing to be doing right now, is just to try and get these out, because a lot of people really, not very many people are really familiar with the class system, and you know, the more we talk about it, even, it's like, yeah, that's still a pretty complicated thing to explain as it is. COSCA does have information on our website, and we've been regularly putting out information through our social media channels. We know that other, even mountain biking groups are advocating the same. Corba has been messaging similarly. We work sort of with an ad hoc group of people nationally, land managers, bike industry, and bike advocacy organizations. So I meet with them, you know, once or twice a month actually, to talk about this, and we're developing educational materials and graphics and, you know, social media postings and things that that are being released mostly through a group called Trails Are Common Ground right now, and then we're sharing them out. So we're collaborating kind of with groups nationally to try and get aligned messaging out to the community. It'll be a while, and you know, and then there's a lot of, you know, there's resistance to this message too. So it's a heavy lift, but we're in good company, and we are collaborating with our partner agencies to try and make this as simple as we can.
Have you gotten much feedback from the bicycling community? I know we had a bunch of folks here last time we met. Are they giving you encouragement, any advice? How are they helping us?
Well, I think our local mountain biking groups have been supportive. You know, of course, they're Class 1 e-bike riders primarily. Our local retailers have actually been really helpful as well, and that's why when we were, if people are considering purchasing electric bicycles to use COSCA trails, we always recommend that they visit a local retailer, because they'll know which bike is the best one for them to access our trails. So we have been, I think, generally the mountain biking community, when I think they, you know, they don't want to see these high-speed, you know, electric motorcycles tearing up trails. That, you know, they're damaging trails and creating safety problems, and all the mountain bikers that we've heard from are supportive of this policy.
Thank you.
I want to follow up on a couple of comments Director Nichols made. I agree that semantically there is a seeming contradiction in that these are motorized vehicles, but we are trying to classify and say what is and isn't allowed, and that just doesn't exist in the law right now. So I think this is a commendable effort to say this is what the trails can tolerate, what people are doing, and then there's other types of motorized vehicles that are maybe not so good for the trails. So I think that's a good starting point. And then I want to follow up on something my colleague, Mr. Engler, said. There were questions, I think, from Mr. Huffer and Mr. Engler about regional cooperation. Is there any effort? You mentioned working together with other agencies on signage to have coherent signage across boundaries. Is there a similar effort at other agencies in terms of amending laws as well?
Well, as Rory mentioned, I think some of these other agencies have already amended
Right.
laws, and so we're probably not breaking the newest ground here.
Right, right.
but-
I mean, in a de facto sense, there are many agencies today that permit Class 1
Yes,
bikes, correct?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, and the groups that haven't yet are probably seriously considering it right now too, because there really isn't an open space and trail system that's not affected by this. So I think it's a fairly universal thing.
Great. All right, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for including this very extensive primer on e-bikes
Right.
in the literature review. That
All you
was
wanted to know and more.
Yeah,
Yes,
indeed,
yes.
absolutely. Yeah, and I know one of the canards about mountain bikes is, they tear up the trails. And it's interesting to read that apparently e-bikes and mountain bikes, the determination was are not that impactful on trail tread. Obviously, if it's wet, you don't want anybody on the trail, but, so that was,
Generally, I believe that finding was that trail construction had the the biggest impact on its durability, more so than the vehicle riding on it, you know, when it came to a regular mountain bike or Class 1.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to take some action?
Actually, Chair, if I could interject
Yes.
for 2 minor items of housekeeping, I would ask the clerk to verify that before we move on and close the public hearing, that no members of the public requested to speak.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the second item, I just want to make sure that we read the exact title of the ordinance into the record, because it may have been slightly different than what was previously read into the record, which is ordinance number 001-2023, an ordinance of the Conejo Open Space Conservation Agency, COSCA, amending section 238, chapter 2 of the COSCA Rules and Regulations Ordinance Manual regarding bicycles to allow Class 1 electric bicycles on COSCA open space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
And a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or negatives? No. Thank you. Okay. Next item, information. Okay. Volunteer Trail Corps activities.
Chair Skay, that's just we've shifted to just a staff report
Okay.
as an information item in your packet.
Okay, so
And
there won't be a verbal
No.
report then. Okay, thank
No.
you. But how about ranger operations and maintenance? We always like hearing from Mr. Kuba.
Well, thank you for having trust in me. Tonight's report could have just been 1,000 pictures of weeds being cut. The ranger spent this morning doing maintenance on the 3 walk-behind flail mowers and gassing them up, and all the weed eaters, and heading out onto 3 different trails. So it was a pretty dramatic morning. But we're going to start from where we were last meeting, when we were still having a lot of rain, and this is another one of the rainy day projects. We have a very large routing machine for making signs, and so the rangers stay busy even if it's wet outside. Right after the rains, we had to do quite a few repairs on the Wildwood parking lot. The gate was open for an emergency one afternoon for a few minutes, and a large truck got stuck in there. The large truck was bright yellow and had blinky red lights on top of it. So it did a fair amount of damage. It took a while for it to drain and dry out enough to do the work, but we got it done. This is the whiteboard as of a week ago, and you can see the list of things that need to get done. The brushing is kind of on the right side in the list there. Things get checked off. They have a program, I don't know, it's kind of chicken scratch, but they know what they're doing. But all the work that's happening is on there, so it's a handy thing. And that everything's been continuing with fences being built and a beautiful day, and things are happening. It's just great with the new rangers that we have. We're accomplishing an incredible amount of stuff. We've had some pretty big graffiti issues in town, and that means throughout town. All of the urban parks are getting hit really, really hard. Did not want to give the graffiti artists any screen time, so I blurred out what they did, but I did want to show how much it takes to clean it up. If you look in the right photo, Ranger Joe is using the spray paint can collection that they have to match the colors of the rocks there. And here's another one. So it's all over town right now, and we're hoping it slows down soon. Along with Trail Education Days comes Trail Education Day Prep, which involves an incredible amount of weed whacking, raking, making sure the amphitheater's ready down in Wildwood and all cleaned up, the nature center's cleaned, and it's a fun time because you know you're prepping for something fun. So, except the week before, we broke the water line going down into the cave, and everybody was cringing because they thought that line was 5 feet deep, and luckily it only ended up being 4 feet deep. But And then pictures of actual trail ed day. We were not joking about the chainsaw. However, the chainsaw does not have a chain on it, but the kids do get to dress up in the gear. The picture in the center is the special ed presentation that was done at the whole access trail. And the Rangers all got a chance to do a lot of the prep this year and presentation, so good learning experience for all the new Rangers as well. This is a shot of typical weed abatement. I'm showing you this just because the contractor, we don't know what's going on. This has got to be the hardest year we've ever seen, but they are moving so quickly. We are so happy with how fast they're going, whether it is new weed eaters and new blades that seem to work better. We do know they have a radio-controlled flail crawler that's track-driven, and they can just sit at the bottom of the hill and it goes back and forth. But they're moving very, very quickly, and they are on target to be done by the deadline. So we're excited about it. There will be regrowth because of the recent rain last week, but we're still feeling really good about this year. So that's really great. And of course, you had to have a sunset with flowers in it. So available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Questions for, yes, Director
Yes,
Nichols.
thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Koo. I always appreciate the update. I was hiking in Wildwood a few weeks ago, and on my way back to the parking lot, I encountered the Rangers and struck up a quick conversation and said, well, how do you contending? I mean, I was out there in Wildwood seeing creeks where I'd never ever seen creeks before, and puddles that I'd never ever seen puddled before. And I said, how's the workload? I mean, you guys got to be crazy. And they were just saying how it's like every morning there's like a new list, and every morning there's a new list, and continue. I'm just wondering, have you made it through that triage yet, and you're actually getting things done, or is it still piling up where there's just more to do than you have time to do it?
There's light at the end of the mustard tunnel. Yes. What you say that it seems overwhelming, but the energy of the room every morning is fantastic. And just like this morning, I said they had the machines apart and they're putting wheels on it and rebuilding the carburetor and everything, and it was going. It was great. So they're hopped up for it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was certainly a year to be tested, so that's good news. Thank you,
Yeah.
and please express my appreciation, at least, for their continued efforts just to kind of make things look somewhat normal in a very abnormal year.
Yes, I will.
Very good, thank you, Matt.
If I can say one more thing.
Yes, please.
Elaine, thanks for being such a great friend for the last 25 years.
Yes. Absolutely. Okay, let's see, COSCA updates from General Manager Frito.
Nothing too specific, but I did want to share that a friend to the city, the Park District, and therefore relevant to COSCA, and I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, Director Nichols, but Tim Hagel is going to be recognized at a statewide park conference for his work with the Conejo Youth Conservation Corps, Safe Passages. He's getting recognized for outstanding community partner / organization. So all of his work he's done with the city and the Park District and now COSCA is going to be recognized statewide. So that's a pretty cool recognition for Mr. Hagel. So
That's fantastic. Absolutely well deserved. A long history. He was a park ranger with CRPD. He was a park ranger with MRCA, Ventura County Sheriff, and now in his retirement, other great things. Yeah, it's fantastic. That's great. Tim, did you have no update from the city? Okay. In that case, we do have, any board member comments? Yes, David.
Thank you. 2 items quickly. One is that in late March, Councilmember Engler, Mayor McNamee, and I went to Washington to ask for money. One of the items we asked for is funding for persons with disabilities to have better access to open space and other public facilities. And we're hoping to get a consultant study to get that started.
Oh, very good.
Part of that effort. The other, on a personal note, I seem to have put my foot in my mouth. At our previous meeting, I made a rookie politician mistake and allowed myself to be quoted out of context. As part of the e-bike discussion last time, I made I stated an opinion that my experience of seeing many e-bike riders is that overall their skill level was lower than that of many mountain bike riders, and that's not just my opinion. Many other cyclists I know hold a similar opinion like that. And the context I was saying that in was that for that reason, I think that education, as we've talked about tonight, is very important. Someone made a video clip of that and cut out just the part where Newman says e-bike riders don't know what they're doing. And that was the clip. And it went national and it went viral.
Oh my God.
Someone posted it on a national e-bike forum somewhere and it blew up. I went on the forum and said, look, I'm a cyclist myself. I'm for e-bikes. They provide many opportunities for people who otherwise couldn't ride, and I'm all for that. I would like to see more of that. I would also like to see them be as safe as mountain bike riders, road riders, BMX riders. Everyone else takes safety seriously. I think e-bike riders should. Unfortunately, there was an incident a few days later, not in open space, but on our streets, where 3 kids on an out-of-class bike were horribly injured, going the wrong way at night on an out-of-class bike on the street, where a car just couldn't see them, and I think at least one of them was critically injured. So more education, more awareness, more efforts like what we did tonight, those are good things. I'm for e-bikes. We love e-bikers. We just want them to be as safe as other kinds of cycling. So that's it.
So we need this to go viral now too. Huh?
That's right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Comment. Thank you very much. Any other board comments? If not, will you take us into closed session?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have 2 items on the closed session agenda this evening. They're both listed in the agenda, and we can adjourn to the park room.
Okay.
Recording stopped.
So we are back in open session, and we'll ask Mr. Dorn to read the.
Thank you. There were 2 items discussed in closed session. The board gave unanimous direction on both items, and there's no further reportable action at this time, and that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. So that means we are adjourned.